Call Jackie Dean.
Mr Speaker, the Crown Pastoral Land Rent for Pastoral Leases Amendment Bill is just about through its third reading, and I imagine that in homes all around the high country of the South Island there will be farming families watching and listening and only wishing that the third reading was over and this could be passed into law, and that would then put to an end the most terrible situation which our high country farmers have faced under the hands of the previous Labor government. And do you know, the Minister David Carter was absolutely correct. Minister David Parker, when he was Minister of Land Information, callously and in a calculated way introduced the rent setting regime in order to force farmers into tenure review. And why did David Parker wish to force farmers into tenure review? It was because the then Prime Minister of the day, Helen Clark, wished to have the high country farmers off the high country so that she could form a high country walking track the length of the South Island. It's as simple as that. And so David Parker, the Honourable David Parker, did the will of the Prime Minister of the day and ratcheted up the rents to the degree where for many of those high country farmers that level of rent was unsustainable. They simply could not afford that level of rent that was being proposed, and the stress that that proposal put on high country farming families should not be underestimated. I will never forget a high country farmer coming to see me in Ranfurly with a proposal for his rent increase. The man was in tears, and that is a really hard thing for a farmer to come into his Member of Parliament and to be under such stress by the Minister of the day that he was completely broken up by it, because he simply did not know how he was going to pay that level of rent. And why? So that David Parker could force the high country farmers into tenure review. Well, Mr Speaker, the high country farmers lost their respect for the then member for Otago and voted accordingly, and I think there is no love lost between that member and that sector of the community. And I was most I was not heartened to hear in the debate, in the committee stage of this debate, a member of the opposition party referring to high country farmers as the privileged few. And that said it all to me. The attitude of the previous Labor government is that the high country farmers of New Zealand are the privileged few and needed to be rented off the land so that that land could be returned for the pleasure of the then Prime Minister Helen Clark. Mr Speaker, this Crown Pastoral Land Rent for Pastoral Leases Amendment Bill puts right that terrible wrong. How can it be right for a Land Information Minister, David Parker, to say, if you don't like it, come and see me, we'll talk about it? What kind of law is that? What kind of legislation is that for any minister to say, oh, well, I'm sorry if it's too much, never mind, come and see me.
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come to me to leave the chair. Order. This debate is interrupted and set down for resumption next sitting day. The House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow.